Homestead is the latest movie from Angel Studios, the makers of the hotly discussed Sound of Freedom. Homestead is about an ex military man who brings his family to a doomsday prepper compound during a nuclear apocalypse where romance and conflict then arise. Is it worth seeing in a movie theater, or should you hunker down in your bunker and just forget about it? Well, stick around and I'll let you know my personal opinion. Hi, my name is Sean Morgan. Welcome to the channel. I love movies. Welcome. Have a seat. Homestead is a movie I was not necessarily keen on seeing, but the offerings at my nearest AMC had gotten pretty slim, as I've been using AMC A List quite a bit. The movie stars Don Olivieri, Neil McDonough, and Bailey Chase, among others. Everyone is perfectly fine and inoffensive here, but the cast is absolutely massive for a reason that we will touch upon later. The film is directed by Ben Smallbone, most notable for directing a large number of Christian pop duo For King and Country's music videos. Ben Smallbone is the older brother of Joel and Luke, For King and Country's members. I guess they like to keep it all in the family there, but I won't get started on any Nepo baby accusations. It's sort of appropriate after all in many ways. Jesus Christ is the original Nepo baby. Um, I have not seen any Angel Studios releases up until now and was not really sure what to expect. I'm somewhat familiar with their unconventional pay what you want and pay it forward kind of Kickstarter methodology when it comes to releasing films and television shows. I know that The Chosen has a very dedicated following and that there was controversy around Sound of Freedom that I don't really want to get into right now. So I was basically expecting a sort of one note and one dimensional kind of Christian movie based on my perception of this studio from the outside looking in. I don't think those kinds of movies are inherently awful or anything, but I have found some of them to be toothless or lacking any real interrogation of faith and its place in the world. I am not a religious person personally, but I think an academic investigation into faith through art is always worth engaging with on a serious and open minded level whenever possible. Homestead doesn't really rise up to that threshold. It wants to be just edgy enough for the dads out there while still being able to ultimately be allowed for church movie night or whatever. Does that mean the movie is totally without entertainment value? No, not at all. I liked, for example, the building blocks of much of what Homestead has to offer. The post apocalyptic genre is something I'll never really reject because of its inherent interestingness. I also think it's worthwhile that the film, spoiler alert, ultimately does land on the side of helping refugees and those in need, and it lands on the side of investing in renewable energy and avoiding violence unless absolutely necessary for some sort of self defense. I was worried, frankly, that this movie was going to be solely about reinforcing negative psychological aspects of doomsday preppers and that it would only be a power fantasy about hoarding food and resources in a situation where you also then feel totally justified in like shooting intruders and those in need because they didn't prepare or take you seriously in the pre-apocalypse world. You know what I mean? And the film is not entirely made up of that, which was a nice surprise. There are shades of the film that are goofy to me, to be sure. I think it's funny that the kind of big bad guy is a government official who literally wants to come and take the main character's guns away. I don't really like politicians, right? But I was kind of tickled at that through line of that particular character. You know, I think the whole he's coming to take our guns. Oh no, like it just felt a little cartoonish as far as portrayals of that kind of politician. I don't know. That's just that's my personal taste and personal opinion in that matter. I don't know if they were trying to parody a specific individual in real life. I'm not really sure. I also rolled my eyes at the sort of meta dunking on one of the stereotypical characters who's like a California woman who drinks her green smoothies and drives an electric car. The film didn't go overboard on hating her, but she was always so panicky and unprepared compared to everybody else. And, her husband sucks and he's a total dumb, helpless fool as well. It felt like the film was inviting the audience to revel in her, like, getting dunked on by her circumstances and by the other characters around her because, oh, isn't this like what you think of dumb liberal elites on the California coast? I don't know. this film kind of has its cake and eats it too, or at least it tries to. They joke about that character being out of luck, for example, for using an electric vehicle and pulling up to the gas station, but because of the disarray and the nuclear fallout, like everyone is able to scrounge for gas, but she's unable to charge her car. So they have fun with that idea. But then part of what saves the day at the end of the film is an investment in solar energy. So I guess good for them, I guess, for playing both sides. I don't think that that's intended as like any sort of ideological growth throughout the movie. I think it's just not that thought through, and they kind of just want to throw a jab in here or there. Um, I will also be honest and admit that I found it silly for one of the characters to work through his murder of another human being via prayer and via getting a girlfriend. Like, there's a teenage character in this film who kills another man in self defense, and he works through the trauma by accepting prayers from his crush and then going on a date with her. If prayer works for you out there watching, like, that's dope. That's awesome. But the way it plays out in the movie makes it seem like his crush kind of has no idea what to say to him in this moment where he's divulging that he is very conflicted about taking another life. So the crush, it plays comedic to me. It seems like she has no idea what to say, so she just pulls it out of her ass and is like, "Oh, let's just pray. Let's just pray. You know, that'll fix everything." And it felt like a last resort. Um, I don't know. I'm sure if I really wanted to, I could try to dissect the ideology of this film in many other kind of academic ways, but that doesn't seem like a very worthwhile exercise. The thing is silly, and while I didn't outright hate the movie, it's not high art at all. It's content, pretty much. Like that's the most accurate description of what I think of when I think of this movie. I don't even think of it as, some movies are films, some movies are art, some movies are movies, and some movies feel like content. And this feels like a piece of content for a studio or for a streaming service. And I will explain why I feel that way a little bit later on. The reason I say that is I should just get into it. I'm so like rambly because this is kind of unlike any other film I've ever seen. The reason I say it feels like content, it's related to my biggest problem with the film. It's not a full movie. It is kind of, in that it tells a general story in its 2-hour runtime. However, so many of the side characters and side plots go unresolved. There is an executive assistant to Neil McDonald's character that seems obviously like a double agent. We never get resolution to what his whole deal is. There's a member of Bailey Chase's military team who seems way more trigger happy than everyone else, seems very violent, but that conflict never reaches a boiling point either. And then Bailey Chase also has an adopted daughter with a mysterious past who seems to draw predictions of the future, like draw predictions of the future that come true. She drew a picture in crayon of the nuclear blast before it happened, and the audience isn't told anything about this little girl's past, if her powers are new or if they're manifesting now. Her entire deal is just off in the fringes of an otherwise, like, quote unquote realistic depiction of a post apocalypse. And this is a movie about a nuclear fallout, and it doesn't depict any sort of like magic or psychic anomalies outside of this one random child who apparently has superpowers, which was really, really frustrating. And again, zero resolution to that. So, why are all of these questions left hanging? Well, the second the movie ends, one of the actors comes on screen out of character, addresses the audience, and they flash a QR code that asks you to pay an extra fee in order to continue the story via a miniseries on a streaming service. The film ends with a trailer for the television spinoff and then begs you for money to watch that spinoff right away. I'm not joking. I get that movies do setups for sequels all the time, right? I get that franchises have now gotten into the rhythm of teasing future installments in like a post-credits scene. Some movies do film sequels simultaneously if the story is particularly big or sweeping. Like, I think the upcoming 28 Days Later sequel also has a follow up, a fifth film or fourth film that is being directed by Nia DaCosta that was shot back to back. Like, that can happen. But this is such a unique case. It felt like a bridge too far to leave so many glaring threads out in the open, to not wrap up the actual story that's on the screen. and then to just immediately put a QR code on the screen in order to like communicate to the audience that they can have the rest of the story, but it's behind a paywall. It just it strikes my ear wrong, right? It leaves a bad taste in my mouth. Movie studios are greedy, but they're supposed to be a little classier about the greed. I'm like stammering throughout this review because of how baffled I was at this decision. Anywhere, anywhere, anywho. God, this movie pissed me off. I'm sorry. I'm trying to be like polite and respectful because I don't want to come across as like crapping all over something that's from like quote unquote Christian movie studio, because I don't want to appear like I'm being um prejudiced in that way. But God, anyway, where does this rank on my scale of A list, A amazing, A average, A abysmal, or needs to be A boarded? I think this movie, while better than I was anticipating, does not rise above the level of being A abysmal. It's a two-star movie if I've ever seen one. There are some interesting ideas at play. I like apocalypse stories. However, the emotional and thematic and intellectual cores of the piece just don't harmonize in a way that activated any pleasure centers in my brain. Plus, I resent the way that they present the additional parts of the story in such a commercialized way. It just felt sour, even for the movie industry, which already is extraordinarily commercial in many respects. Whatever. I saw this as an experiment where I see as many films with AMC A list as I possibly can in the span of 1 year. I saved $9.69 on this ticket. Nice. But I don't really think I'm too thrilled about that deal. I like feeling like I got a free movie ticket, of course, but I would have rather gone to like an art house theater and paid the same amount of cash to see like The Last Showgirl early or something. But if you've seen Homestead, what did you think of it? Am I an agent of Satan for being so critical of this movie? Are you a diehard Christian who loves Angel Studios and the type of content that they make? Can someone tell me why on their website their mission statement is all focused on quote unquote amplifying light, when that's a really nebulous term that does not really mean anything? I'd love for someone to actually explain to me how Angel Studios quantifies that. How do you quantify whether or not a story amplifies light? Is it just like they say capital H he enough times and that like qualifies it as a light amplifying movie? I don't know. Um, Thank you so much for watching this. Uh, this is probably one of the most unique films I've ever seen. I guess I don't regret seeing it for that reason alone. Feel free to like this video or subscribe to the channel for more thoughts on other theatrical releases as they come out. Stay safe, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.